The massive council chamber floated in space above Nexus Prime. Its crystal walls stretched for miles in every direction. Inside, hundreds of alien beings sat in their assigned seats. Some had scales, others had wings, and a few looked like walking trees. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages being translated by the chamber's computers. Juan walked slowly toward the speaker's platform in the center of the room. His dark suit looked simple compared to the colorful robes and glowing armor worn by the other representatives. Behind him, Jisoo carried a metal briefcase filled with data records and star charts. Her hand shook slightly as she followed her boss toward what might be the most important speech in human history. The Galactic Council had been meeting here for over 3,000 years. Earth had only been a member for 25 years. Most of the alien species in this room had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They made sure everyone knew it too. Veltar, the representative from the Saurian Empire, watched Juan approach with cold yellow eyes. His green scales glittered under the chamber lights. He leaned over to whisper something to the delegate sitting next to him. Both aliens laughed quietly. Veltar had made it clear many times that he thought humans were too young and stupid to be in the council. Juan reached the speaking platform and placed his hands on the metal podium. The chamber slowly grew quiet. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and other organs turned to look at him. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Juan said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's speakers. "I stand before you today with urgent news that affects every world, every species, and every life in our galaxy." A few aliens shifted in their seats. Others continued to ignore him, focused on their own conversations or data tablets. Juan had expected this reaction. Humans were still seen as newcomers who did not understand how the galaxy really worked. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of our galaxy, Juan continued. At first, we thought these might be natural phenomena. Solar flares from distant stars perhaps, or the birth of new cosmic formations. Jisoo activated a holographic display above the speaker's platform. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of their galaxy. Tiny red dots appeared along the outer edge, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "We were wrong," Juan said. "These energy signatures are not natural. They are artificial. They are moving. And they are heading directly toward the populated regions of our galaxy." Now more aliens were paying attention. The red dots on the hologram began to move inward, following curved paths that would eventually lead them to the galaxy's core where most civilizations lived. Veltar stood up from his seat. "Ambassador Juan," he said in a voice that dripped with false politeness. "The Saurian Empire has been monitoring space for over 10,000 years. Our sensors are far more advanced than anything your species possesses. We have detected no such threat." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Several other representatives nodded their heads or made similar gestures with their alien appendages. Juan had expected this challenge too. "With respect, Representative Veltar, your sensors are designed to detect known forms of energy and matter. These signatures are unlike anything we have encountered before. They seem to absorb and redirect most forms of scanning attempts." The hologram changed to show detailed energy readings. Strange wave patterns moved across the display like living things. The data looked chaotic and unnatural. "Our scientists believe these signatures belong to vessels or entities of extragalactic origin," Juan said. "Based on their size and energy output, each one appears to be comparable to a small moon." This statement caused an immediate uproar in the chamber. Aliens began talking loudly in their native languages. Some laughed outright at what they clearly saw as human foolishness. Hex 9, one of the ancient crystalline entities, began to glow with a soft blue light. When these beings spoke, their words appeared as floating text in the air above them. "Young human," the text read. "Your species has existed in space for barely 4 centuries. You lack the experience to properly interpret cosmic phenomena. What you describe sounds like the fantasies of primitive minds." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Juan felt his face grow warm with embarrassment and anger, but he forced himself to remain calm. Jisoo placed her hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture of support that helped him continue. "I understand your skepticism," Juan said, "but I ask you to examine the evidence we have gathered." The hologram showed recordings from human monitoring stations. Distant stars seemed to flicker and dim as the energy signatures passed near them. These entities appear to drain energy from stellar objects. 3 uninhabited systems have already gone dark. Veltar laughed again, louder this time. "Even if such ridiculous creatures existed, what would you have us do? The Saurian Empire alone possesses enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Our energy weapons can crack planets in half. Our shields have protected us from every threat for millennia." Other representatives began to voice similar sentiments. The Quantum Collective bragged about their matter manipulation technology. The machine intelligence spoke of their ability to calculate every possible tactical scenario. The energy beings claimed they could simply phase out of normal space if threatened. Juan waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. "I propose that we work together to develop a coordinated defense strategy. Human military doctrine emphasizes preparation for unknown threats. We could share our tactical knowledge with your advanced technologies." This suggestion caused even more laughter. A representative from the Telepathic Union projected amused thoughts directly into the minds of nearby delegates. The message was clear. Humans were warlike primitives who thought every problem could be solved with violence. "Furthermore," Juan continued, "I recommend immediate joint military exercises to test our combined capabilities. We should also establish shared early warning networks and develop new weapons specifically designed to counter these entities." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Many aliens saw this as proof that humans were trying to militarize the peaceful galaxy. For over 1,000 years, the major civilizations had maintained peace through superior technology and diplomatic agreements. The idea of preparing for war seemed barbaric to them. Veltar stood again, his scales now darker with anger. "The human representative reveals the true nature of his species," he announced. "They are unable to think beyond conflict and destruction. They seek to drag our peaceful galaxy back into the dark ages of warfare. This is exactly what we feared when Earth was granted membership," added a representative from the Harmonious Collective. "Humans cannot understand civilized society. They see enemies where none exist and propose violence as the solution to imaginary problems." Juan tried to speak again, but his words were drowned out by the growing chorus of angry voices. Aliens, who had never agreed on anything before, now united in their opposition to the human proposal. Some demanded that Earth's membership in the Council be suspended. Others called for trade restrictions and diplomatic isolation. Jisoo activated her translation device and leaned close to Juan's ear. "Sir, we're receiving private messages from several delegations. They're saying this confirms their suspicions about human intentions." Juan nodded grimly. He had hoped that presenting clear evidence would convince at least some of the council members. Instead, it seemed to have made humanity's position worse. The council's voting system activated automatically. Each representative's seat glowed, with a soft light as they registered their decision. The question was simple. Should the Galactic Council accept the human proposal for joint military preparations? The voting lasted only a few minutes. When it finished, the results appeared on displays throughout the chamber. 847 votes against. Only 3 votes in favor. Juan looked around to see which delegations had supported humanity. The Botanical Collective, a peaceful species that believed in helping others, had voted yes. So had the warrior clans, who valued honor and courage above technological superiority. And of course, Earth had voted for its own proposal. Everyone else had rejected it completely. The council's chief administrator, a tall being with silver skin, stood to make the official announcement. The proposal by the human delegation has been rejected by an overwhelming majority. Furthermore, this council formally censures the Earth delegation for spreading unfounded fears and attempting to destabilize galactic peace. The word censure hit Juan like a physical blow. It meant that other council members would now view Earth as an unreliable partner. Trade agreements might be canceled. Diplomatic missions could be suspended. Humanity's carefully built relationships with other species were now in danger. As the session ended, delegates began filing out of the chamber. Most avoided looking at Juan and Jisoo. A few shot them angry glances or made dismissive gestures. Feltar walked past their platform and stopped just long enough to deliver a final insult. "Perhaps when your species grows up you will learn to behave in a civilized manner," he said. Then he walked away without waiting for a response. Jisoo waited until the chamber was nearly empty before speaking. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from our..." 6 months had passed since the disaster at the Galactic Council. Admiral Minji stood on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching construction ships work around the clock to build new orbital platforms. Bright welding sparks lit up the darkness of space like tiny stars being born. The view should have filled her with pride. Humanity was building faster than ever before, turning their entire civilization into a fortress. But the cost was becoming clear every day. Trade ships that used to bring exotic goods from across the galaxy had stopped coming. Diplomatic messages went unanswered. Even scientific cooperation programs were being quietly canceled. "Admiral," came a voice from behind her. Minji turned to see Dr. Tejo approaching with a tablet in his hands. The chief researcher looked tired. He had been working 18-hour days since the council meeting, trying to turn theoretical weapons into reality. "What's the report, Doctor?" Minji asked. Tejo activated his tablet, showing her the latest production numbers. "We've completed the first batch of fusion pulse cannons. The test results are better than expected. They can punch through most known shield technologies." "Most known," Minji repeated, "but not all. The crystalline entities use a form of energy dispersion that we haven't figured out yet, and the quantum collective can phase their ships out of normal space for short periods." Tejo swiped to another screen. "But we're making progress. The adaptive AI systems are learning from every simulation we run." Minji nodded and took the tablet to review the data herself. The numbers looked impressive, but she knew they represented only a fraction of what other civilizations could deploy. Humanity was still the youngest member of galactic society. Their technology was considered primitive by most standards. "Any word from Captain Buell's reconnaissance mission?" she asked. Tejo's expression grew more serious. "She reported in 6 hours ago. The energy signatures Ambassador Juan detected are definitely getting stronger. Whatever they are, they're moving faster than our original calculations suggested." A cold feeling settled in Minji's stomach. The timeline they had been working with assumed another year or two before the threat reached populated systems. If these entities were accelerating, humanity might have much less time than expected. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message. The caller ID showed it was from Earth's president. Minji accepted the call, and a holographic image of President Kim appeared in front of her. "Admiral, I need an update on Operation Forge Shield," the president said without preamble. "The Economic Ministry is reporting massive strain on our resources. Some colonies are asking if this military buildup is really necessary." Minji had been expecting this conversation. Converting a peaceful civilization into a military powerhouse was expensive and disruptive. People were making sacrifices without understanding why. "Sir, the threat is real and growing," she replied. "If we don't prepare now, we may not get another chance." "But our allies aren't preparing at all," President Kim pointed out. "The Botanical Collective just announced they're converting their remaining military ships into agricultural vessels. Even the warrior clans have reduced their fleet size by 30%. This news hit Minji harder than she let show. Daita warrior. Clans had been humanity's strongest supporters in the council. If even they were scaling back their military, it meant the rest of the galaxy truly believed there was no threat. "Sir, I recommend we continue with the current plan regardless of what others are doing," Minji said. "The evidence supports our assessment." President Kim was quiet for a moment. Political leaders had to balance many competing concerns, and Minji knew he was under pressure to reduce military spending and restore normal trade relationships. "Admiral, I'm giving you 3 more months," he finally said. "If this threat doesn't materialize by then, we'll need to reconsider our approach. The people can't sustain this level of mobilization indefinitely." The call ended, leaving Minji alone with Dr. Tejo on the observation deck. Both of them understood what the president had really said. Humanity was betting everything on a threat that most of the galaxy thought was imaginary. If they were wrong, it would bankrupt their civilization and destroy their reputation forever. 3 months, Tejo said quietly. Think we can make a difference in 3 months? Before Minji could answer, another person joined them on the observation deck. Captain Buell had just returned from her latest scouting mission to the galaxy's edge. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot, and her uniform showed the wear of extended space travel. Captain, Minji said, I was just asking Dr. Tejo about your latest report. Buell's expression was grim. Admiral, you need to see this for yourself. She activated a portable projector, filling the air above them with a 3-dimensional star map. This is what we found at the edge of the Vega sector. The map showed a region of space that should have contained 3 star systems. Instead, there was nothing but empty darkness. The stars themselves seemed to have been drained of all energy, leaving behind cold, dead hulks. The energy signatures are definitely artificial, Buell continued. And they're massive. Each one reads as larger than our biggest space stations. But here's the strangest part. She adjusted the display to show energy flow patterns. They're not just moving randomly, they're organized, following specific routes that will bring them into contact with the most populated systems first. Dr. Tejo leaned forward to study the patterns more closely. That suggests intelligence. Whatever these things are, they're capable of strategic planning. There's more, Buell said. She changed the display again, showing a timeline of recent events. I monitored communications from the affected regions. The hegemony of Arcturus has been trying to send distress signals, but they're being jammed or absorbed somehow. The few messages that got through mentioned something about their energy weapons being useless. Admiral Minji felt that cold feeling in her stomach grow stronger. The hegemony of Arcturus was one of the galaxy's most advanced military powers. Their energy-based weapons could supposedly destroy entire fleets. If those weapons were ineffective against these entities, most other civilizations would be equally helpless. What about kinetic weapons? She asked. Old-fashioned projectiles and explosive devices? Unknown, Buell replied. Most advanced civilizations abandoned kinetic weapons centuries ago. They're considered primitive and inefficient compared to energy-based systems. This gave Minji an idea. Humanity still used kinetic weapons extensively because their technology wasn't advanced enough for pure energy systems. What other civilizations saw as a weakness might actually be an advantage. Dr. Tejo, I want you to focus all research efforts on kinetic and chemical weapons, she ordered. Projectiles, explosives, anything that doesn't rely on energy fields or exotic matter. Tejo looked surprised. Admiral, that's a step backward technologically. We'll be using weapons that are thousands of years old. Sometimes old solutions work better than new ones, Minji replied. If these entities can absorb or redirect energy, we need to hit them with something they're not prepared for. Her communication device chimed again. This time the caller was Junho, a young pilot who had been participating in advanced training programs. Minji accepted the call, curious about why a junior officer would contact her directly. Admiral, Junho's excited voice came through the speaker. I need to report something unusual that happened during today's simulation. Go ahead, Minji said. I was testing the new AI interface systems when something strange occurred. The computer seemed to respond to my thoughts faster than normal. Input methods. It was like the AI could predict what I wanted to do before I gave the commands. Dr. Tejo immediately became interested. That shouldn't be possible with current technology. The neural interface is designed for communication, not prediction. I know, sir, Junho replied, but it definitely happened. My reaction times improved by almost 40% during combat simulations. Minji exchanged glances with the other officers. If this was real, it might represent a breakthrough in human combat capabilities. Most alien species had faster reflexes than humans, making them superior pilots and gunners. But if human minds could interface more effectively with AI systems, that advantage might be neutralized. Junho, report to Dr. Tejo's lab immediately, she ordered. I want this phenomenon studied and replicated if possible. Yes, Admiral. As the call ended, Minji turned back to the observation window. The construction ships were still working, but now she could see additional details. Workers in spacesuits moved with practiced efficiency, installing weapons systems and shield generators. These people believed in humanity's mission, even when the rest of the galaxy thought they were crazy. Captain Bayul, I want you to prepare for another reconnaissance mission, she said. But this time, you won't be going alone. Take a full squadron with you. If these entities are as dangerous as we believe, we need to start gathering tactical intelligence. Understood, Admiral. And Captain, if you encounter any of these entities directly, do not attempt to engage. Observe from maximum distance, and return immediately with whatever data you can gather. Bayul nodded and left to prepare her mission. Dr. Tejo remained on the observation deck, already making notes about the pilot enhancement research. Doctor, there's something else I want you to investigate. Sunho floated in the command center of humanity's most distant monitoring station, watching screens that showed the empty darkness between galaxies. For 18 months, he had been stationed at this lonely outpost at the very edge of known space. Most people thought this assignment was a punishment, but Sunho understood its importance. He was humanity's early warning system. The station was small, built for a crew of only 12 people. Its main purpose was to watch for exactly the kind of threat that Ambassador Huan had warned the Galactic Council about. Every day, Sunho and his team scanned the void beyond their galaxy, looking for signs of danger that others refused to believe existed. Today was different. Today, the screens showed something that made Sunho's blood run cold. Nari, come look. At this, he called to the communications officer. She pushed off from her workstation and floated over to join him. What is it? She asked, then stopped speaking when she saw the display. Is that? Contact Admiral Minji immediately, Sunho said. Priority Alpha. Tell her the warning was correct. On the screen, massive shapes were emerging from the darkness, between galaxies. They were not ships in any sense that humans understood. These entities looked alive, like enormous creatures made of metal and energy. Each one was the size of a small moon, with writhing appendages that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Around them swarmed smaller creatures still larger than most starships, moving with the coordination of a vast living organism. Nari activated the long-range communication array and began transmitting to Earth. The message would take several hours to reach its destination, but it carried the most important news in human history. The threat was real, it was here, and it was beyond anything they had imagined. How many are there? Sunho asked, adjusting the sensors to get a better count. I'm detecting at least 50 of the large entities, Nari replied. The smaller ones number in the millions, and there are more still emerging from dark space. Sunho felt a mixture of fear and vindication. Ambassador Huan had been right all along. The Galactic Council had dismissed humanity's warnings as paranoid fantasy, but now the evidence was undeniable. Unfortunately, being right would not make the coming disaster any easier to survive. The monitoring station's computers began analyzing the entity's movement patterns. The results appeared on Sunho's screen within minutes. The swarm was not moving randomly. It was following a direct course toward the galaxy's outer rim, where the first inhabited systems would make easy targets. They're heading for the Arcturus sector, Nari observed. The hegemony has 12 populated worlds there. How long until they reach inhabited space? Sunho asked. The computer calculated trajectories and displayed the results. 48 hours at current speed. 2 days. The galaxy had 2 days before the first civilized worlds would face an enemy that could drain the energy from stars themselves. Sunho knew that most of those worlds had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Council had declared humanity's warnings to be false propaganda. No one would be prepared. His communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. The sender. Identification showed it was from Captain Bayul's reconnaissance squadron. She had been conducting surveys closer to the galactic edge, trying to gather more information about the approaching threat. Monitoring Station 7, this is Captain Bayul, came the voice through the speakers. We're tracking multiple large contacts heading your direction. Are you seeing this? Confirmed, Captain, Sunho replied. We count at least 50 major entities plus millions of smaller craft. They're moving toward the Arcturus sector. Understood. We're moving to observe, from a safe distance. Do not attempt to make contact or interfere with their movement. These things they're not like anything we've seen before. The transmission ended, leaving Sunho and his team alone with their terrible knowledge. Through the station's viewports, they could actually see the approaching swarm now. Distant lights moved against the star field like a slowly spreading infection. 3 hours later, Nari received a priority message from Earth. Admiral Minji's voice came through the speakers with the clarity that only came from the most urgent communications. Monitoring Station 7, this is Admiral Minji. We have received your report and are implementing full military alert status. Continue observation but maintain maximum distance. Under no circumstances should you attempt to engage these entities. Understood, Admiral, Sunho replied. What about the other civilizations? Are they being warned? There was a long pause before Admiral Minji responded. We have sent warnings to all Galactic Council members. Most have dismissed them as human propaganda. A few have acknowledged receipt but taken no action. The reality of the situation hit Sunho like a physical blow. Billions of people were about to face an enemy they could not imagine, and most of their leaders were too proud to listen to warnings from humanity. The next few days would see civilizations that had lasted for thousands of years completely destroyed, simply because they refused to believe they could be threatened by anything. Admiral, these entities appear to be draining energy from any source they encounter, Sunho reported. The energy pattern suggests they consume stellar radiation, electromagnetic fields, and any form of power generation they come across. Confirmed. We have reached the same conclusion based on your earlier reports. Continue monitoring and transmit all data in real time. 6 hours later, the first contact occurred. The hegemony of Arcturus was a proud civilization that had ruled their sector for over 8,000 years. Their technology was based on pure energy manipulation. They could create shields that stopped any known weapon, and their offensive systems could crack planets apart with focused energy beams. None of it mattered. Sunho watched through his monitoring equipment as the swarm reached the outer edge of the Arcturus system. The hegemony's automated defense platforms immediately activated, filling space with energy barriers and scanning beams. Within seconds, those same platforms began to dim and go offline. The entities are absorbing the energy from their defense systems, Nari reported. The more power the hegemony uses, the stronger these things seem to get. The main fleet of the hegemony emerged from their home world. Over 300 vessels armed with the most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy. They formed battle lines and began firing concentrated beams at the approaching entities. The energy weapons struck their targets and simply disappeared. The entities absorbed every joule of power and continued their advance without slowing down. Some of them actually seemed to grow larger as they fed on the incoming attacks. The hegemony fleet is retreating, Sunho observed. Their weapons are completely ineffective. But retreat was not an option. The entities moved faster than any ship, surrounding the hegemony vessels before they could escape. What happened next was too horrible for Sunho to watch directly. The proud ships of the hegemony were drained of all energy, leaving only cold metal hulks drifting in space. The inhabited worlds of the Arcturus system tried to surrender, broadcasting messages of submission in dozens of languages. The entities ignored these communications entirely. They descended on each planet and began the same feeding process they had used on the fleet. Within 12 hours, 12 worlds that had been home to billions of people became lifeless rocks floating in space around a dying star. Nari began receiving distress signals from across the galaxy as news of the Arcturus disaster spread. The first response came from the crystalline entities, ancient beings who had existed since the early days of galactic civilization. This is impossible, the translated message read. Our sensors detected no threat in that region. The hegemony must have suffered some kind of internal catastrophe. Other civilizations echoed this disbelief. The Quantum Collective insisted that their superior technology would prevent any similar attack on their worlds. The machine intelligence calculated that the destruction of Arcturus was statistically insignificant and required no response. But some were beginning to understand. The Botanical Collective, one of the few races that had supported humanity in the Council, sent a desperate message asking for advice on how to prepare defenses. The warrior clans began mobilizing their remaining fleets, though they seemed confused about what they should be fighting. Then came a transmission that made Sunho's heart sink. Veltar of the Saurian Empire was attempting to contact Earth directly, bypassing all normal diplomatic protocols. Human Admiral Minji. Veltar's voice came through the communication system. His usual arrogance was replaced by barely controlled panic. The Saurian Empire requires immediate assistance. These creatures, they are approaching our territory. Our energy weapons cannot harm them. Nari looked at Sunho with surprise. The same alien who had mocked humanity's warnings was now begging for help. But Sunho felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Too many innocent people were going to die because their leaders had been too proud to listen. The swarm continued its advance into the galaxy. The Quantum Collective's home system was the next major target. These beings could manipulate matter at the quantum level and phase their ships out of normal space to avoid damage. They were convinced that their advanced abilities would protect them. They were wrong. The entities seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. When the Quantum Collective tried to phase, Admiral Minji stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Alpha, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching swarm. The screens painted a terrifying picture. Dozens of moon-sized entities were moving steadily toward the Sol system, surrounded by millions of smaller creatures that moved with perfect coordination. "Time to contact?" she asked Captain Bile, who had just returned from her final reconnaissance mission. 18 hours until the leading edge reaches our outer defenses, Bile replied. Her face was pale from what she had witnessed at the galaxy's edge. "Admiral, I've seen what these things do to energy-based weapons. Every civilization that tried to fight them using conventional methods was destroyed within hours." Minji nodded grimly. She had been receiving reports from across the galaxy. As one advanced civilization after another fell to the swarm, the Saurian Empire, the Quantum Collective, the energy beings, all had been consumed despite their superior technology and thousands of years of experience. "But we're not using conventional methods," she said. "Dr. Tejo, status report on the special weapons." Dr. Tejo looked up from his tablet, exhaustion clear on his face. He had not slept in 3 days, working frantically to complete humanity's desperate preparations. "The kinetic weapon platforms are online and loaded. We have tungsten rods accelerated to 0.7 light speed ready to fire. The nuclear warheads have been modified with enhanced radiation output." "What about the dead zones?" Minji asked. "Deployment. Teams are in position. We can create energy void areas around our most important installations, but maintaining them will require our ships to operate at the very edge of the effect. It's extremely dangerous." Minji turned to another officer. "Junho, how are our pilots handling the new interface systems?" The young pilot who had discovered the enhanced AI connection stood straighter. "Admiral, we've trained 200 pilots in the new techniques. Our reaction times are now faster than most alien species. The AI systems can predict our intentions and respond accordingly." "Good. You'll be leading the first wave." Engineer Kira, Admiral Minji's daughter, approached with a status report from the orbital defense platforms. "Mother, the kinetic cannons are charged and targeted. We've calculated firing solutions for the largest entities." Minji felt a mixture of pride and fear seeing her daughter prepared for battle. Kira had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment, managing the defense platforms that would be primary targets for the swarm. A communication alert sounded throughout the command center. The message was from Ambassador Juan, who was coordinating with the surviving alien refugees that had fled to human space. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different civilizations," Juan reported. "They're begging to serve as support crews in exchange for protection. Some are offering their entire remaining fleets to human command." The irony was bitter. These same aliens had mocked humanity's warnings and dismissed their military preparations as primitive nonsense. Now they were offering to become servants if humans would save them from the consequences of their own arrogance. "Accept any offers that come with useful intelligence," Minji replied. We need to know everything possible about these entities. Capabilities. Admiral, came another voice. It was Veltar of the Saurian Empire, his image appearing on the main communication screen. The proud alien who had once laughed at human warnings now looked broken and desperate. The Saurian Empire formally requests sanctuary within your defensive perimeter. We offer our remaining ships and all our technological knowledge in exchange. For protection. Minji studied the defeated alien for a moment. Part of her wanted to refuse to let him experience the same dismissal that humanity had faced in the Galactic Council. But she was not fighting this war for revenge. Your ships will be placed under human command, she said. Your crews will follow human tactical doctrine without question. If you agree to these terms, take position behind our outer defense line. Veltar's relief was visible even through the holographic display. Agreed. The Saurian remnant is at your service. Similar conversations were happening across human-controlled space. Alien refugees were flooding toward Earth, abandoning their own territories to seek protection from the primitive humans they had once scorned. The few surviving ships of great galactic powers were now taking orders from human officers who had graduated from military academies just years before. All ships, this is Admiral Minji, she announced over the fleet communication network. The enemy will arrive in 16 hours. Remember your training. These entities feed on energy, so we hit them with kinetic weapons and stay mobile. No prolonged engagements. Strike hard and fall back. The human fleet began moving into position. Unlike the organized battle lines favored by most alien civilizations, the humans deployed in small, scattered groups that could attack from multiple directions. Their ships were smaller and less advanced than those of the great powers, but they were also more maneuverable and harder to target. Captain Buell took command of the first wave, leading a squadron of fast attack vessels armed with railguns and missile launchers. These ships could accelerate quickly and change direction rapidly, making them difficult for large enemies to track. Junho led a special unit of pilots using the enhanced AI interface systems. Their ships were equipped with swarm attack protocols, allowing them to coordinate attacks with computer-assisted precision while maintaining human creativity and intuition. Admiral, we're detecting the first energy distortions at the edge of the system, reported a sensor operator. The entities are beginning to emerge from hyperspace. Minji watched the tactical display as red dots began appearing throughout the outer system. The entities were massive, just as the reports had described. Each one registered as larger than Earth's moon, with energy signatures that defied conventional analysis. All defense platforms prepare to fire on my command, she ordered. Target the largest entities first. The kinetic weapon platforms that humanity had spent months building began charging their systems. Unlike energy weapons that the entities could absorb, these platforms fired solid projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. The tungsten rods they launched carried no energy signature that could be drained. They were simply very heavy objects moving very fast. Contact in 30 minutes, reported Captain Biol. The swarm is spreading out to surround our defensive positions. This was exactly what human tactical doctrine had predicted. The entities were trying to use their superior numbers to overwhelm the defenders from all directions. Most civilizations would try to form a single strong defensive line, which could then be broken at its weakest point. But humans had learned warfare through thousands of years of conflict on Earth. They understood that sometimes the best defense was to attack in unexpected ways. Implement Plan Delta, Admiral Minji ordered. All units begin random evasion patterns, make them chase us. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, abandoning their defensive positions and forcing the entities to pursue individual targets. This violated every principle of conventional space warfare, but it also confused enemies who were used to facing static defenses. Junho's squadron struck first, darting in close to one of the smaller entities and unleashing a barrage of kinetic projectiles. The solid rounds punched through the creature's energy fields and caused visible damage to its organic-looking hull. Direct hits, Junho reported. Kinetic weapons are effective. But the victory was short-lived. The entity immediately began regenerating, the damage drawing energy from somewhere to repair itself. Other creatures in the swarm moved to support it, creating overlapping energy fields that made further attacks more difficult. "Fall back and regroup," Captain Bile ordered. "Don't let them surround you." The human ships retreated rapidly, but not before several more squadrons had confirmed that kinetic weapons could hurt the entities. The creatures were not invulnerable. They could be damaged by attacks that did not rely on energy. "Admiral, the entities are beginning to target our orbital platforms," Engineer Kira reported. "They're sending smaller creatures to attack the defense stations." "Activate the dead zones," Minji ordered. Across human space, specially equipped, ships began generating energy void fields around critical installations. These fields created areas where the entities could not feed on ambient energy, effectively starving them of their primary source of power. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Entities that entered the dead zones began to slow down and lose coherence. Some of the smaller creatures actually began to dissolve as they were cut off from the energy that sustained them. But maintaining the dead zones required human ships to operate at the very edge of the effect, making them extremely vulnerable to attack. Several vessels were destroyed when they ventured too close to the void fields they were generating. "This is working," Dr. Taiho reported from his monitoring station. "The entities are avoiding the dead zones. We can use them to protect critical areas." Admiral Minji studied the tactical display. The swarm was adapting to human tactics faster than expected, but it was also showing signs of confusion. These creatures had never faced an enemy that used such primitive weapons combined with unconventional strategies. "All platforms fire at will," she commanded. The orbital defense stations opened. 5 years had passed since the last Void Devourer was destroyed in the outer regions of human space. The galaxy was finally quiet again, but it would never be the same. Ambassador Huan, now in his 70s with silver hair and deep lines around his eyes, stood before the reformed Galactic Council in its new chamber on Earth. The room was much smaller than the grand crystal palace that had once orbited Nexus Prime. That magnificent structure had been consumed along with most of the galaxy's ancient wonders. This new council chamber was built in the practical human style, functional rather than impressive, designed for work rather than ceremony. Most of the seats were occupied by humans or by aliens living under human protection. The great civilizations that had once dominated galactic politics existed now only as small refugee populations scattered across human-controlled worlds. Where hundreds of different species had once debated as equals, now perhaps 30 remained, with any significant presence. "The final casualty reports are complete," Huan announced to the assembled delegates. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death and destruction. 71% of all galactic civilizations have been completely destroyed. Another 22% exist only as refugee populations with fewer than 1 million survivors. The numbers were staggering, but they had become familiar over the years of rebuilding. Ancient empires that had spanned thousands of star systems were reduced to a few thousand individuals living in human-provided housing. Species that had existed for millions of years now faced extinction because their populations were too small to sustain themselves. Beltar sat in the front row, no longer wearing the magnificent robes of Saurian nobility. His simple gray uniform marked him as a member of the Human Defense Corps, the military organization that now protected what remained of galactic civilization. The proud alien who had once mocked humanity's warnings now served under human command, grateful for the chance to help defend others from sharing his people's fate. The Saurian Empire recorded a population of 12 billion before the invasion. Huan continued. Current survivors number approximately 8,000 individuals. The quantum collective has been reduced from 40 billion to fewer than 300. The energy beings, who once numbered in the trillions, now exist as exactly 17 individuals living in specially constructed containment facilities. Each statistic represented the near-complete destruction of civilizations that had thought themselves invulnerable. They had been so confident in their advanced technology and ancient wisdom that they could not imagine any threat capable of challenging them. Admiral Minji, now wearing the insignia of Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, rose to address the Council. The years of warfare had aged her, but they had also given her an authority that even the most arrogant aliens could not question. She had saved the galaxy when no one else could, and everyone knew it. The reconstruction efforts continue on schedule, she reported. Human manufacturing capacity has increased by 400% since the war ended. We are now producing enough ships and equipment to defend the entire galaxy from future threats. This expansion had been necessary because humanity was now responsible for protecting everyone else. Most alien civilizations had lost the ability to defend themselves, having seen their military forces destroyed in the futile attempts to fight the Void Devourers with energy weapons. What about the integration programs? Asked a representative from the Botanical Collective, one of the few non-human species still capable of independent action. Commander Junho, now a decorated war hero and fleet admiral, answered the question. The young pilot who had discovered the enhanced AI interface had become one of humanity's most effective military leaders. Integration is proceeding smoothly. Former alien military personnel are adapting well to human tactical doctrine. Some are showing exceptional aptitude for our unconventional warfare methods. This was diplomatic language for a profound shift in galactic power. Alien soldiers who had once considered human military thinking to be primitive barbarism were now eagerly learning those same techniques. The crude human approach to warfare had proven more effective than thousands of years of advanced alien military science. Dr. Taiho, now Director of Galactic Technology Development, provided an update on research efforts. We have successfully reverse-engineered most surviving alien technologies and integrated them with human manufacturing processes. Production of defensive systems has increased dramatically. What he did not mention was that human engineers had improved upon most of the alien designs they studied. Technologies that other species had considered perfected were enhanced by human creativity and practical thinking. The galaxy's former masters were now learning from their former students. There is one more matter that requires discussion, Juan said. His expression became more serious as he gestured toward a memorial wall that dominated one side of the chamber. The monument to the extinct civilizations has been completed. The wall stretched from floor to ceiling, covered with thousands of names written in hundreds of different languages and symbol systems. Each name represented a species or civilization that had been completely destroyed during the Void Devourer invasion. Some had existed for millions of years. Others had just begun to explore space when the swarm found them. The inscription has been translated into all surviving languages, Juan continued. He read the words that appeared below the endless list of names. They ignored wisdom for pride and paid with everything. May those who remain learn from their sacrifice. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the memorial. Many of the aliens present had lost everything, their homeworlds, their governments, their entire ways of life. They survived only because humans had been willing to fight for them despite being dismissed and insulted for years. Beltar rose slowly from his seat. The former Saurian representative looked older than his species normally showed, worn down by the weight of his people's near extinction. Ambassador Juan, I request permission to address the council. Granted. Veltar walked to the speaker's platform where Juan had once delivered his warning about the approaching threat. The alien's voice was quiet but clear as he began to speak. 5 years ago I stood in the old council chamber and laughed at humanity's warnings. I called Ambassador Juan a warmonger and accused his species of trying to destabilize galactic peace. He paused, looking directly at Juan. I was wrong about everything. The admission hung in the air like a physical presence. For a member of the proud Saurian nobility to acknowledge such complete error was almost unprecedented. The Saurian Empire believed that our advanced technology and ancient experience made us superior to young races like humanity. We thought that 10,000 years of civilization gave us wisdom that others could not possess. Feltar's voice began to crack with emotion. Our arrogance destroyed us. He turned to address the entire council. We had the opportunity to work together with humanity to prepare for the threat. Instead, we chose to mock their warnings and isolate them diplomatically. Billions of my people died because we were too proud to listen to those we considered inferior. The chamber remained silent as Veltar continued his painful confession. When the Void Devourers arrived, Our energy, weapons were useless, our advanced shields meant nothing. Our thousands of years of military experience counted for nothing against an enemy we could not understand. He looked back at Admiral Minji. Only human tactics and human weapons proved effective. Only human leaders had the wisdom to prepare for the unthinkable. Veltar straightened his shoulders and delivered his final statement. The Saurian people formally apologize to humanity for our blindness and arrogance. We pledge ourselves to service under human leadership, not as conquered subjects, but as grateful allies who have learned the price of pride. When Veltar returned to his seat, other alien representatives began to stand. One by one, they offered similar apologies and acknowledgments. The crystalline entity survivors admitted that their ancient wisdom had been worthless against a truly unprecedented threat. The machine intelligence representatives acknowledged that their logical calculations had failed to account for human intuition and creativity. Ambassador Huan listened to each apology with dignity, but his expression remained serious. When the last alien had spoken, he returned to the podium to deliver his closing remarks. "We accept your apologies," he said simply. "But apologies cannot bring back the civilizations we lost. They cannot restore the billions of lives that were destroyed because leaders chose pride over preparation." He gestured again toward the memorial wall. "Those names represent the ultimate price of ignoring warnings. Species that might have survived for millions more years are gone forever, because their leaders could not admit they might be wrong." Juan's voice grew stronger as he continued. "Humanity has now become the dominant power in this galaxy. Not because we sought conquest, but because we were the only ones willing to prepare for the unthinkable. We take this responsibility seriously." Admiral Minji stood to join him at the podium. "The Human Federation hereby establishes the Galactic Defense Protocol," she announced. "Never again will this galaxy be caught unprepared for existential threats. We will maintain the military capacity to defend all